Well, why don't you first tell us who you are and who your parents were and why and how they came to the U.S.
I am Angelo Dominick Perini, firstborn son of Peter and Julie Perini. My parents immigrated from Voltino, Italy, my father, and Veggio, my mother. And in 1938, my mother, already married and with child, me, took a ship called the Rex from Genoa, Italy to New York City, Ellis Island. And she came through the Ellis Island facility and passed all the tests and sat in the great room on the wooden benches which are there today. My father was asking for her maiden name, Marchetti, and it did not register. And as a result, my mother would be sent back on the same ship that she came, the Rex, to where she came from, if nobody came to claim her. And finally, when everybody had been processed and she was still sitting in the great room, my father across the room saw her and said to the guard, "That's my wife." And he said, well, her name is Perini, which is her married name. And that's how he was able to have her come into America, at which time they took a train to West Haverstraw, which is on the banks of the Hudson River, and they rented an apartment on the 3rd floor of a building in West Haverstraw, where I was born. A few months later, my father was able to buy a house in Garnerville, about 3 miles away. It was a row house where people workers for the corporation would live as a company. They would work for the company and live there. But my father was able to buy the house outright and work as a free agent to make contracts and do contracting work and just general labor in 1938. And jobs were very difficult to find in America. Both he and my uncle were able to keep busy working because they had a skill of able to cutting stones and making granite works, and they were always occupied. I grew up in that house with my brother Dominick, my sister Josephine, and my second brother Louis, and my sister Frances. 5 of us. We had a small yard where a garden in the back produced abundance of crops, and there were always chores to do for all of us, and we strictly spoke Italian, and we didn't get much outside contact until I went to kindergarten, where I had a teacher who spoke Italian and English, and as a result I got a lot of homework and studied in such a way that I was able to teach my mother. My father spoke some English on the job, of course, and he always had work, and he always had work for us. And our day revolved around keeping place maintained, clean, painted, and we did a play, you know, kids would. We had playground. But we were a very tight-knit family because we stayed in our yard. Then after school, I would go to the first grade, the second grade, and my brothers and sisters, I would bring them to school. We went along one day at a time, and we started to meld in with everybody else until I came first in the class. Mathematics, science, history, all these things fascinated me. I thought it was very fortunate to study. I made that #1 project. We all were top students. And then we came home and stayed in our yard.
Here, can you stop? Can you turn that back on?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And across the street, we had a playground where we would go over, and all the kids of the street would get together, and we had a certain amount of time, playtime. My mother called us home for supper. So that's how we were able to bridge the gap into mainstream. And we went through all the 8 grades, valedictorian, salutatorians. I went to high school, and in 8th grade, the test. And I wrote a paper about American history, and there was a test, which came because I put in the test that I like gardening. I like planting. They said I should be a farmer. And
Here,
the lady,
maybe we should wait. So, 1 sec. Mom?
well, she's banging all the stuff that'll go on the film. Tell her that.
Can you do this in a little while?
Yes.
It's loud.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just a few minutes.
Let her. She's going to put her away.
No.
Yeah, because I could hear it. You know.
And you can look over here if you want, like right
Over
here.
here.
Yeah, because
I was
then.
never interviewed before.
Yeah.
So the lady next door, Emma, she went down to the school and said, "No way, take college entrance. He's got enough qualifications, college entrance. No farmer." And that's how I was able to get into the higher college entrance type classes in high school, to physics, algebra, chemistry, and all the college entrance courses, which at those days were controlled by the New York State Regents Department, where I got all high grades, and that's how I got through high school. The sports I took up were golf and the regular track type sports with all the other kids. We took a bus. The grammar school was walking. In high school, we took a bus.
Well, here, maybe
She's
we
still
should
banging
wait.
the dishes. And why don't we just wait till she's all
Okay.
done?
I'll just pause it.
She's going to get done, so she's going to get. You're going to do something quiet, Mary. All right.
Nothing.
While we were going to grammar school, we had a bus which brought in children from the outlying districts. Brought children in from the outlying districts. It was a large bus that went around the mountains. So we had a blend of the local children, us, and these other children, which were still operating in feuding modes, which very poor people didn't achieve much, but they fought a lot. So that's how I learned there were different people out there, even though they were, as America, they were not all the same. So as we went to the next step, we took a bus back and forth about 2 or 3 miles to Haverstraw High School, and there we went through the normal classes. I got the college entrance course I explained before on how Emma intervened with the school district and said, no, these kids are all going to go for college entrance. And of course, Dominick and Josie and Francis all followed with taking more aggressive courses in the higher schools. So let's see. At that time, we spent our Saturdays going to work with our father and our uncle, and in summers we went to school. We went to work with them on the job, laying bricks and concretes and mixing cement. Until we got 16, we went to the golf course, and they gave us $5 to carry 2 bags, 18 holes, which was a tremendous amount of money in that time. And so that's how it started me off in going to the golf course, where I went to a local one, which was a public course. You didn't get that kind of money there, but of course you got to play golf, and you got to learn how to take care of a golf course. I first started off picking up the balls, and people would hit them out. I'd pick them up. You get paid so much for a quantity of balls to bring them back. And then my cousin, Jack Drescher, was in charge of cutting the grass there. And when he went off to college, I took his job to cut the grass and take care of the golf course. Of course, there was a nice pay with that. And I still carried the golf bags, and then I got where I played a little golf too, and was able to show some of the people how to play. And hotel associated with the golf course. So of course Dominick would follow on after me, and he would make a little more money there than he did mixing cement with my father and my uncle. And it's a lot easier work, so we kind of like that. And I moved into the hotel. I started out by bringing baggage for the hotel guests, helping them with with the caddying with the golf bags and stuff, and then started by bringing the bags into the hotel. And then one weekend I said, well, why don't you work inside as a busboy? So the waitresses would put the dishes out, and we'd go pick up the dishes. But we got, after the weekend, the people are there 2 or 3 days, they would tip the waitress and they'd tip us. So you moved along from, when they were very crowded, you went for the last station where they didn't tip so much, and then as you got better and better, you became the most desirable person, so you were the first one picked. And you were able to select who would sit at your table, so the tips, the amount of money you made was more. So my brother and I worked at the hotel for many years to supplement our, the money that we made working in other things. So we always worked. We always had some work. And in the springtime, we would work on the garden, turn it over by hand, and then we would plant the crops, and then take care of them till the fall, and we harvest the crops. And then my mother would work packing jars for the winter. Tomatoes, peaches, pears. Uncle Jimmy had pears at his house, which we would go up and pick. And we learned how to operate with fruits and vegetables, canning. And we never had any animals, though. We always had fruits and vegetables, and we had grapes. We had grape arbors. And they were Concord grapes. They were a little bitter to the taste. They weren't as sweet as California grapes. And my father would get about 20 boxes every year of California grapes and mixed them in with the Concord grapes to make 55 gallons. Under the federal regulation, you were able to make a certain number of gallons, and we did that. And
You made gallons of
wine. Gallons of wine were made in barrels, and they had a room in the basement just for that cooler. I come home from school and worked the wine until it became, grind the grapes up, push the solids down that floated up until the fermentation process is complete, and then we bottle it. So we had wine for all year long. On the other hand, Uncle Jimmy, he didn't have any kids, and he had money, so he went out and bought the Gallo Burgundy gallons of already made wine. So we made it, and he bought it.
Why did Uncle Jimmy have money? How come he had that big house?
Well, he made that house. He built that house with his own hands, and then he had contracts, and as a result of the contracts, he made, my father and he split the profits, and Uncle Jimmy and his wife worked all the time. So they had two incomes. She worked as a lawyer secretary for Thomas Gagan. And he was a very prominent lawyer. And so Uncle Jimmy married, who was a distant cousin of mine too, my aunt. They never had children. And he had a car. He had a car. He would drive around in a car. And that was, went to the city. We went on day trips to visit other relatives.
In New York City?
New York City.
Who were they?
The Kobielyak family. Now, don't ask me how they got the name Kobielyak, but I think some Kobielyak married into the Perinis. And they had they lived in Greenwich Village and in the city. The other families was Montagnoli. They lived in West New York, over by, on the other side, in Jersey. So we would visit them. And they had a misfortune in that Mr. Montagnoli had an accident with some steel, got into his eye, he got blinded. And so he always worked. It impressed me quite a bit to see the things he could do as a blind person. But we'd see them on day trips. Go down, stay, eat, and stuff, and come back. My father would give him some of his wine, and they'd talk about the old country. They all came from the same village in Italy. So
why did they all come?
They came to America to seek out a better life, because in Italy there was nothing. They had no food. They had many children. There were 14 children in my father's family, and there wasn't enough to feed them all. So my father went off to Germany and Switzerland and did work and sent the money back to my grandfather to take care of the family. And then came the opportunity for them to come to America. They came here, they did the same. They always sent money back and gifts back to their your brothers and sisters. And when the war came, we were separated by couldn't go back and forth. And but after the war, we could send packages called relief packages, where under the control of the government, you could send 10 kilograms, 22 pounds. My mother would take the cloth that my father was able to secure in that factory. They made cloth in there. And she'd sew it with a needle and thread, and inside she'd put coffee, cocoa, sugar, shoes, whatever was on the list of things that could go to countries for helping them get back up after the war. So I used to take my little wagon and bring the packages down, and that's where I learned the names of Tremosine and Desenzano, and I used to read the cards my mother wrote on there. She was very, very good at writing. She the spelling, you could read it, and there was a certain amount of money I had to pay the postman, but I was a little kid who was too heavy to pick up the 22 pounds. He'd come around, and I thought that was kind of good. He'd put it through the window, and then I'd go over to the basket in the corner, and I'd try to pick the letters out that had foreign stamps on them, or any kind of stamps. And I saved those letters and stamps. Even to this day, I still have some of that stuff, old stamps. I would take and bring them home. And I was only about 3 blocks away from our house. And there was a little small grocery store there. I would go to see Sam, and I'd give him a list of what my mother wanted. And I remember he had this little thing, like a stick with a clamp on top, where he'd reach to the top shelf and grab a box of cereal, and he'd flip it and catch it. And I thought that was kind of neat. Put it in the bag. But we all always had brown paper bags, and I had a little red wagon. And I'd go back home, and we had a ice box. Not for long. The iceman would come and put ice in it, and then we got a Frigidaire. He plugged it in the wall, and it made cold. So I had to hurry up home if I had to bring home, milk or something like that. Not milk, everything except milk. The milkman came and delivered the milk to our front porch. But if I needed to bring home something, I had to get it right to the refrigerator. And I went in there with all those fresh fruits and vegetables that we picked in our own garden. And from when I got home from school till supper time, the period of time, some of those days we played in the park across the street. But there were other times where I had to help my mother make the meal and stir polenta, stir soup, rice, whatever it was, and everything was cooked on the kitchen stove for the supper. And we all got around the table, we all ate together, and we all got along. And then it came going to school, and then we met other people. And the real split was when we went to high school. When you went to high school, you had friends which were quite a distance away, and they had cars and trucks, and you'd drive back and forth. And now the milk came from a milkman. He would put so many quarts of milk on the front porch, and then you'd take them in, put them in the refrigerator, and then you would put the empty milk bottles in the cage. It's a little thing. It held 8 quarts of milk, and he would take the empty bottles back. So the milk came, you used it, and you put the bottles, and he'd take the empty bottles back and gave you new bottles. And that was kind of, we used quite a bit of milk. We had 5 kids. And my father always was able to make money to keep the family, fed, pay the taxes. And because I was the oldest one, this thing came along called income tax. So I had to read the papers and figure out how to fill out, I was only 10 or 12 years old, fill out the forms. And you put the numbers in the little box, and then you signed it and sent it in. So my parents didn't know very much about that, so couldn't do it ourselves. I figured it out, and from then on, I did my own taxes ever since. I made sure that I learned all the ins and outs of taxes and why I was doing it. And so I started out doing it for my father. And then he had a thing called Social Security taken out of his taxes. And I couldn't figure out what that was. So I made a certain amount of money and they took out Social Security and you filled it out. But the taxes were very small, very small amount of money, very small income. So we did that. So after I finished high school, I met a lot of people. Went to college. Because I was a Catholic, I went to St. Peter's, which had a mission in Garnerville. And that's where they had the services. So we would walk over just a little bit further than the post office. And we were the first ones in the church. We'd sit in the front row, the Perinis, and then we'd go back home. And when I decided to go to college, I went. Again, Emma helped us out. She was the lady next door. And closest college was Catholic. It was Manhattan College in the Bronx. So I made out the application. I only applied to one school one time. Okay. And I went there and had to pay tuition. And that's where the money I made on all these jobs that I had, I put it away in the bank. I used that to pay for them. First day of college, I went out and I bought a set of luggage. None of us had any luggage. And I think I might still have some. I put my clothes in there and I went off all by myself to college. Freshman. And I had a roommate and went to classes. And that's where I got started. Picked electrical engineering and took all the courses. And still I would, on the holidays and weekends, and when I came back home, I would go to the hotel as a waiter because I made an awful lot of money. Helped me pay to get through college. And after the first year, I got drafted in the United States Army, 2 years. And got a letter came in, and went in the Army. And because I had electrical experience and electronic knowledge, I was put into guided missile repair. And I went to Huntsville, Alabama with a school. And there I met Werner von Braun, who later became the head of NASA, to put the Saturn V into space. I didn't know who he was. I just went there and did the function, the electronic technician for these things. And then I moved out to White Sands, New Mexico, where we set up the sites for testing these rockets. And I counted the days till I was finished and went right back and finished my college. Finished college. Actually, I did it in less time. Instead of 3.5 years, 2.5 years, whatever. Saved about a year because I learned a lot in the military about. So I took a job in the college, repairing and maintaining their laboratory equipment, which they paid me so I could pay my own tuition. And that turned out to be very good because I enjoyed working on the electronic gear, and I got my studies paid for. But I had to work. I couldn't play golf then. I couldn't do anything other than study. And then IBM came to Manhattan and they said, we're looking for people to work in Poughkeepsie, New York. So filled out application and just came up here. And 2 years before that, I went down to 42nd Street, where the Irish girls would come for dances and tea dances. And I met Mary there, and we got together, and Manhattan had a program where you would go to the theater, Broadway shows, and you would do an opinion survey. You'd ask the people 10 questions, how much money they made, what they did for a living, stuff like that, whether they're going to buy Lucky Strike, a lot of cigarettes, and pushed. And because I took so many of these surveys, I would get to watch a show for free. So Mary and I did that for a while, and then New York is quite a busy place. And I graduated from Manhattan and went directly the next day to Poughkeepsie with IBM. That's how fast they wanted people to come here and start building these transistors and chips and computers and wherever it was. So we came to Wappingers Falls and rented a half a house and stayed there a year. And then, just like my father, he looked over and saw this house for sale, Manor Drive, and we bought this when Mary and I came here. Now, I don't know exactly when, but we were in this house, and Mary had James, the firstborn son, but we kept connected to New York City because we were already approved. We were approved to go to the hospital there. So when it came time to deliver Jim, we drove all the way to New York Hospital, where James was born. But I was working at IBM. And the work was very interesting, and it was the kind of work you did. It was technical, it was new, it was advanced, it was a lot of fun, but it was very time consuming. Now, because of this surge of top-notch people that were hired by IBM, they also brought with them very competent, educated women. So there was an oversupply of educated people in a small area who were interested in schools, and they went to the school district, made sure that the schools were the best that it could be, and of course the women kept things together. There was no such thing as people going off doing their own thing. Everybody worked as a team, and it was not for earning money. It was not you got paid, but you didn't get the full amount that people doing the same job for other big corporations, which never guaranteed that you would have a job. IBM said, if you stay with us, we'll guarantee your job for life. And we'll give you health insurance for life. And we'll give you country club. And this is part of the job, but we won't pay you a lot. Your pension will be a little less, but you're here because you want to be here. And as the IBM family. So we had this thinking, all of us working together in the laboratory, and all of us working together at home. The women were very supportive. Kids came along, and IBM took care of that. And so we didn't have to worry about anything. So that's how the cycles came. The economic up and down cycles, you know, were managed. Where when things got slow, IBM would put other projects on. And when one project finished, another one would start to look 5 years into the future. So it was this constant evolution of inventing. So if you're an engineer and you spend your time coming up with new ideas and inventing, it's not for the money that you're there, it's for that feeling that you created something new for the world, you made something better, you improved the quality of life, eliminating pollution and getting more out of a gallon of oil to heat a building. We come with computers to do a lot of that stuff, and that was the main thinking behind this IBM family, if you want to call it that. This thinking of doing better for everybody by staying together many years. And so most people did that. There were some who went off on their own, and they were no longer heard from since. They were. Now, not all our projects were ended successfully. There were many that needed to go back and rework them. Many projects needed to be scrapped altogether. But the idea that one good idea was made to blossom and make a bigger, better, faster computer. So we improved the rule at 10 times every 5 years. The computers got 10 times bigger and 10 times faster. And then the next 5 years, 10 times bigger and 10 times faster. And that kept going for 40 years, you know, quite a few years, until you got what you got now. Because if you go back to 1964, all the computers they used to put the people on the moon were less than what you have now in your laptop. So that's the amount of improvement that was put out there for human nature to use. And since that time, they've used that as a platform, a foundation to spring forward. And all of the data that's moving here in this camera as you're receiving is thousands and thousands of times more than what we had. We had a small, very, very small computers with very clever people trying to make them do something. A couple of the rules, IBM frowned upon games, you know, video games. The software people were in one area, we were hardware people. We made the chips, we made the computers, and they wrote the software. There was some there was some sharing. But the hardware people really wanted to make good hardware, fast, and reliable. And over all these years, I can look back and say, well, the thing that made the world, IBM, what it is today, is reliability. Back then, there was not enough reliability in a computer to ever put one in a car. I never ever thought there would be enough confidence in this little, in this computer to be the car. Now they're driving cars. So huge changes have been made by using what's locked up in the human mind to come up with new ideas, and they had both logical things and creative things, and art. Art was encouraged for putting things. And it was a lot of planning, a lot of thinking before anything at all was done. In fact, it was so darn much, it was tiresome to plan and plan and plan, and then finally you could build it. And then after you built it, it didn't work. So then you had to make it work, and then you had to determine whether or not this was the right thing to do. But they had the first automatic production lines that they made. IBM came up with robots and automatic things, and then they put them in, locked them up. They wouldn't put them out because they would take the job of people. They said, no, we're not going to take people's jobs. But then they came up with robots for painting, or people didn't want to paint a car. And they worked with the car companies. They worked with everybody. IBM was the center of all of this computer stuff for everybody. So your computer would be built in Poughkeepsie, have your name on it. There were so many of them demanded that you'd have a line. You would actually have to wait in line until it came to your turn. And all the big insurance companies, banks, governments got to use them a lot for the census. It was a big thing, and Social Security, and the tax, income tax, to follow. So turned out to be a new field. In my
Monter, it's Mary.
in my field.
Actually, I'm going through some
She,
papers I'm looking at here, and I'm going,
Irish.
ooh, tomorrow's Monter, and hey.
So
Is that correct,
we came up
Bill?
with-
Are we doing that?
one
What day is today? Today's,
one guy was sick
oh,
in the
today's
hospital.
Monday.
So the deplorable condition. People were smoking in the operating rooms,
Yeah, today's Tuesday,
and
yeah. So,
we
so
learned
when are we getting together?
that we couldn't smoke making the chips.
Oh.
Particles of smoke.
Oh, how did I miss that one?
Made
I
bad
have a-
chips.
I have a note to myself.
So he said, why don't we not smoke in the hospital room?
Well, that's what I meant.
And we come up with air cleaning mechanisms.
We're doing lunch
IBM.
tomorrow at Shadows.
We started a whole new
Yes, that's what
technology
I think,
of
yes.
cleaning the air so that when you
Oh.
worked, you running?
Yep. So,
So we were into the area of developing
yeah.
what turned out to be computers at a later date, and accelerating the amount of capacity that they were able to undergo. And the key thing was reliability, and make them last a long time without failing. So that took time. And then we had our families at home, and we had little children going to school, and brothers and sisters, and along came 1977, the twins, David and Julia, but their big brothers were too big. They were out of the house already, running around. So Mom was home with the little children running around this very floor. It was very enjoyable, a pleasure. We took vacations in the summer, and we bought a place in the Catskill Mountains where we went for the summer because it was too hot here. I had air conditioning in the job at work, but the house was hot. We didn't have air conditioning here at that time. The Catskills had cool streams, had higher elevation, and it was a place. I lived there, and I would drive all the way down from the Catskills to work on a Monday morning. I'd go back later in the week, and up there it was fishing, golfing, and just general summer fun. And IBM continued, and then during the slow times, IBM had us go out and come up with jobs for people and keep the full employment going. And as a result, we're getting into reliability, which means we're going to make these chips last a long time without failing. In order to do that, we had to have super clean water, super clean air, and we had to purify everything, and static electricity, which lightning storms and picking up static charges from rugs. And so IBM set up departments to look at all of these environmental issues so the computers would be better. As a result, mankind benefited from this. In the anti-static, IBM came up with paint, rugs, clothes, which removed the electrical charge people picked up by just moving around. Come up with meters for measuring it. For the air, we came up with equipment. These are corporate-wide projects which came up with very clean air. Particulates were measured, and experiments were done to trace the particles to try to make pure and clean air. Came up with testing equipment to measure it. And as a result, the whole world benefited by measuring its air, and they found out the whole world was dirty. So the coal companies went to, the power companies went to their chimneys to clean out the carbons. The oil companies went to the cars to make the pollution less in the cars, and the car companies. Engineers did this to make the world safer for people, tracing these things back to human beings being made sick by clean air, dirty water. And it was IBM that started all this 30, 40, 50 years before the government ever got involved. Their water that was let go into the streams was purified, and IBM put trout in ponds downstream to prove that these animals could live in that water that they released because they cleaned it. And the chemicals were recycled. We didn't have drains. We had red cans where all the used chemicals would go in these special sealed red cans back to the company that made the chemicals to remove the impurities or to recycle the chemicals. This was all set up a long, long time ago. So as IBM went forward, they kept reinvesting in itself and making the product better. came from Voltino,
And Marchetti, yeah.
and the Marchetti family was my mother's family, and they
They were
were farmers. They were more people who had cows and milk and made cheese. They had olive trees. They made olive oil, and they were more mountainous people. They were higher in the mountains. They did more living off the land. And down in the cities is where things developed. And we had my uncle started a company making filing cabinets. He got the first patent for the filing cabinet drawer to open and close. And he still makes these filing cabinets and office furniture. He's still making it today. So that's one of the industries that was started in Italy. There were other people in the arts and music and in Desenzano, in the city areas. And most of the people were workers. Now there was one part of the family, the Milesis, and they were very well to do. They owned large vineyards, they owned a winery, they owned a foundry. And after World War II, they had people go around and pick up the spent ammunition, and they melted it down and made the cast the bronze statues behind the Lincoln Memorial. It was donated to America in thanks of the repatriation after World War II and how the Americans helped Italy to come back as an economic power. So my cousins came here to donate those bronze statues to the American government, and they were pretty well off. And the Luigi, who had the office, was pretty well off. The third industry they were in was construction. We had some builders who put up church steeples, and when they had earthquakes, things would fall down. But they built hospitals and churches and bigger construction business. And the fourth industry was hotels. They own about 10, 15 hotels in those mountains, 4 of which were my direct relatives owned them. And one became a 4-star hotel. That's Luigi. That's Luigino. So up in high in the mountain. The Germans are the tourists that come down to these villages and partake, and they still come. And so my family does a lot of work for them in the tourist business, you know, folding napkins, washing linen to, you know, support the hotels, and do a lot of the work, cooking, and cooking and cleaning. So when the tourists come, they rent the place for a week, these accommodations. They were always close to us. We visited them, we exchanged information, exchanged all for many years. But they were on the Italian side of World War II, we were on the American side. So you had brother against brother, if you want to look at it that way, for the period of the war. But Italy was not in the war after 1942. It was Hitler alone took over, and the Italians just had to wait until the war was over. And there were letters back and forth from us to them, and there was a certain amount of understanding of one another, and till the war was over. When the war was over, everybody's happy because now we could go over and they could go and come back. Some of the early things I remember is my cousins coming to America, and I would have to pick them up at Kennedy Airport and visit with us, and took them to see the Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building, things like that. And they were very appreciative of what they saw here, and he went back and told everybody about it. And when my cousins came with the statue, equestrian statue behind Lincoln Memorial, you know, courage and valor, they came to our house, and we were impressed by these people who stayed at the Waldorf Astoria. So they were pretty well-to-do. And these are early remembrances of what my family was, and with the 14 brothers and sisters, they had pictures showing who they were, what they, how many kids they had, and how the family developed. And so we were the only two here in America. It was my Uncle Jim and my father. And my father had 5 children. And the rest of them in Italy, they had about 275 people were descendants from my grandfather. So they had a lot of children too. And as I said before, they were mostly workers. 80% were construction workers, office workers, municipal workers, police, people like that. And 15% were businessmen and owners of properties and
You said some people were musicians or
there was one musician, and I forget who it was. One of my cousins was a writer of music. And then there's my Marchetti, who was an artist. You met him. Didn't you meet Pina? Pina, the guy who made the copper sheets. He made the copper sheets artwork. And that was Marchetti. And
we should stop.
I know why she has to do that.
Maybe we should just
shut it off.
Wrap up for now.
Yeah. She's going to do that.
Well, it's 8 o'clock anyway, and it's a lot to do this.
Yeah, I'm tired too.
So, but we got a lot of good information here. This is great.
Yeah, shut it down, Jeff.
So,
because you're recording dishes, okay?
I'll try to make it more clear about that if we talk again. But we'll think about other things we might want to. This might make you think this week of other memories you want to get down.
The thing I'm trying to think about, where like that stupid wedding. We'll find it. But the things that my family left behind, were not. I mean, there was one guy who wrote music, and another guy who were very learned people, but that they were few. But we could wait till she goes to bed, Julie.
Okay, so that's not working.
We have to work around it.
That's not working.
Just told her before, it just didn't. But I think you got the overall picture.
Yeah, yeah, maybe you'll think of other things you wanna share this week. Do you wanna have dessert or something?
Yeah, but I didn't want to bother you.
Well, we'll do more another day.
We're shut off, tell her we shut off.
Yeah. That's a good